I'm really excited to introduce, we have our moderator, Andrea Bernstein. She's not only a good friend from WNYC, but she's an investigative reporter, a Peabody winner, and she's also been teaching college courses. And next to Andrea, we have Bart Gellman. He won a Pulitzer at the Washington Post for leading the team that covered the National Security Agency and Edward Snowden. He won 2 other Pulitzers for his coverage. Give it up. 2 other Pulitzers for his coverage of Vice President Dick Cheney and the 9/11 attacks. And more recently, he was at The Atlantic before joining the Brennan Center for Justice, where he's now a senior advisor promoting democracy and the rule of law. We have 2 current high school journalists. Zoe Reyes is a junior at Bronx River High School and arts editor of the Bronx River News. And Soumik Dey is a senior and the news editor for the Pacer NYC at Pace High School. Both Zoe and Soumik work at newspapers that Press Pass NYC helped to develop, and they are members of our student advisory board. So, Andrea, take it away.
Thank you so much, Beth. Before I begin, student journalists in the back. As Beth mentioned, I'm also a teacher, so a lesson for tonight is when you're at a press conference, you always want to be in the front row. And get your question answered. So come on up, sit in the front row, get some practice, because the other thing that you have to do is you have to have muscle memory, like you have to have practice walking right up to the front. And there you go. The rest of you standing in the back, also come on up. There's plenty of seats. There's no reason to stand through this, and you know, want to fill the seats in the front. Thank you so much. You know, something Beth didn't tell you is, unlike all of you, I was not a journalist in high school. I was not interested in my high school paper. I didn't even really think about being a journalist. I was, however, on the math team. And I recently, as captain of the math team, true story, which is a great skill for journalism, by the way, understanding math and science. And I wanted to be a scientist. In college, I worked at my college radio station as a DJ. And then I worked for a little bit in public radio in North Carolina. Then I had a circuitous route to WNYC, where my very first gig was, this is true, I was co-host with Curtis Sliwa. True story, that's how I got my start in radio. I was co-host with Curtis Sliwa at WNYC. Curtis had been fired from his job at WABC, and the station was at the time owned by Mayor Rudy Giuliani, who said, you can have a job at the city station. Then the people running the city station were like a little embarrassed, so they were like, okay, we'll have co-hosts. So they had me, and they had a rotating cast. That's how I met Beth, was co-hosting that show. So, like, in New York City, the characters, they just keep coming around. So, I'm going to start by asking a question, which I feel like I'm interested from hearing from all of you. So start with you, all of you who knew in high school, Rose Arcee, the chair of your board, that you wanted to be a journalist and wanted to work on the paper. Why? Like, what made you do that?
So, an honest answer would be that I turned out to be a really bad junior varsity gymnast. And I got cut from the team, and I started looking for something else to do that would be an interesting activity. And the truth is, I'm a curious person, and I like the idea that in journalism you can be curious for a living. And so I walked down to the paper, and it was not well populated at the time, and a couple of friends and I came in and pretty much took it over, and I became the editor the next year.
How did you know how to do that?
Well, I sort of didn't. I was a little bit of a kind of current events nerd in high school. I was interested in the world. I got this cheap student subscription to the New York Times in my Philadelphia high school. They had a program where you could sign up at the school. And so, I was reading journalism, and I was blessed with a chance to come to New York for a week in the summer between my junior and senior year of high school to a program they had at the Columbia Journalism School for high school editors to learn more about how to do it. And so we learned about reporting and verification and how you fact check, and we sort of broke that way forward as best we could.
So just for a little context, this was a very different time in the news, right? Like this was, I mean, not to date you, but let's just say it wasn't like Woodward and Bernstein were still really highly thought of. So at the time, and I'm just sort of wondering, like, did you feel like, okay, like, did you have that awareness in high school of like journalism is like this, thing that can sort of turn the world around?
I understand that our leaders aren't always honest with us, and that there's information that people want to keep secret, and that journalism can expose that to good effect.
Right, so let's skip a few years. I'm going to ask each of you the same question, which is, what made you want to work in student journalism? We'll start with you, Zoe.
I have a very similar answer. It was because I couldn't do theater. And I had a lot of free time, so I was like, okay, I might as well join. And it just got me thinking, sometimes you think that it's the end of the world and you can't do something, but really it's just redirection.
Did you, had you thought about journalism before? And
Honestly, no.
so we're going to get a little bit into the study about, how high school students feel about journalism, but I'm just sort of wondering, like, how when you joined, like, did you, same sort of similar question that I had for Bart, which is like, did you feel like it was something to do good in the world, or really literally just something to fill the time?
At first it was definitely something to fill the time, but as I went on, it became something so much more important to me and to my life, and I started recognizing how great journalism is, especially in creating a dent in the world, and I don't know, I felt like I had to mold it into that.
And how about you, Soumik? How did you get into this?
For me, I was put into the journalism elective in my school out of my own volition. I signed up for it. I didn't really think too much about it because this was at the end of my freshman year. It was kind of a surprise going into sophomore year because I'd completely forgotten. But I think that intro to journalism class was like one of the best things I've ever done for myself for my high school career.
Just pause there for a minute. Why? Like, what was so great about it?
Well, I had a really good advisor. I think he really made me fall in love with journalism, and I think, I guess, I always had a knack for writing, and I think journalism was a great vehicle for me to use that to do something good, because I've never really been an outgoing type, like, I was never one to do SEO, so I feel like journalism for me was a good way to get myself out, get my name out in the world.
Did you, do you remember the moment of you're like, wow, like this is the thing for me?
Not exactly.
I want to talk a little bit more with Bart, but I just want to ask you both, like, can you tell us a little bit about what it is specifically that you do at your papers?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm very flexible at my own newspaper. I feel like our entire newspaper is very flexible. We have titles, but we can all do everything. So I'm the arts editor, and I usually, edit arts and entertainment stories. But there aren't a lot of those, unfortunately. I'm usually the one writing them all. So I also do investigative stories. I take photos. I do illustrations, for the newspaper. And everyone just does that. That's kind of the norm.
We'll talk about the investigative in a minute. Soumik, how about you?
I do a little bit of reporting, a little bit of editing, and photography. I'm an news editor and a photography editor. I would say I do a lot more, I guess, on the writing end. I like that.
So, Bart, you got involved in a lawsuit when you were in high school over publication of a particular story. Tell us about that.
I mentioned that I went to the Columbia training for 1 week before senior year. And one of the things we learned about was student press law. We kind of had several hours from a press lawyer who explained to us It's based on a case called Tinker against Des Moines from, somebody can tell me, 1969 maybe. That the Supreme Court had found that First Amendment rights, constitutional rights, don't stop at the schoolhouse gate. And we learned about a more recent case in the Fourth Circuit in which Virginia high school students had written about teenage pregnancy in their paper. And the principal hadn't wanted to let it happen, and the circuit court, the appeals court, had ruled in favor of the students. And so I thought, well, that's actually a significant issue in my urban Philadelphia high school of 5,000 students. So we did a package of stories for my first issue as editor. I anticipated trouble. We had a very tough-minded principal named Dr. Wacker. I'm not making this up.
You frequently get names like this. It's really unbelievable.
And
the good thing about journalism is you can just say that.
we had thought she might object to the story. And so, although the paper had until then been printed in the high school print shop, we sold ads over the summer so that we could pay for an outside printer. The principal found out about these stories and called me in and said I couldn't publish them, and I, was like a 16-year-old know-it-all, and said, well, the Fourth Circuit, you can't do it. This didn't persuade him. And so when we printed the edition, she sent someone to the print shop and seized all the issues and brought them back to the school furnace and burned them. And then she fired me as editor and closed the paper. So I had a decision to make. I mean, this is something that I got more and more interested in, this whole journalism thing. And, I have a tendency not to like to be told what to do. And I had to think about how much I cared about this, because it wasn't going to be a small risk to bring a lawsuit against your own principal. And it's not something I recommend for don't try this at home kids. I certainly wish it hadn't come to that, but the ACLU got me some pro bono lawyers at Temple Law School, and we went to federal court. And most of the way through my freshman year of college, we won a settlement that said we could publish the story. So that's an example of how the law works often at a crawl. But the whole experience was extremely interesting and educational, and it kind of locked me in very early on. So I then joined the college paper, and I did summer internships at news organizations, and I was one of the very lucky people who gets to know what he wants to do very early in life. So I stuck to it.
How did that experience inform the rest of your journalism career?
Well, lots of ways. I mean, first of all, one big part of journalism is the study of power and how it's used and holding power accountable. So I learned a lot from a very proficient user of power, my principal, and the school district of Philadelphia. I mean, this principal, when I was applying for college, told the college counselors to give her the form, and she would fill it out for me, and I did not sign a waiver so that I would be able to see what the high school recommendation said, but she forgot to keep a copy. I saw that later when I got to college. And she basically just wrote, there is not anything I could say that would be helpful toward Mr. Gellman's application toward your institution, and she left everything else blank. So, I mean, I learned what powerful people can do if they want to abuse their power. And I learned how courts aren't, instant producers of justice, and sometimes they're not ever the producer of justice. And I learned that I really cared about what was true and wanted to spend my life doing that, finding out what's true. I mean, I love the profession. You can be curious for a living. I covered the US military for the Washington Post, and I got to go on a submarine and an aircraft carrier and go visit a tank battalion. I could also, talk to people. The Defense Department has a miniature, not very mini, State Department inside it, with a couple thousand people working on policies. So I could talk to kind of privates and generals, and I was actually the only one who did that, because nobody else in the Defense Department talks to the sailors and the submariners and the privates and the generals and the policy people. They all have different jobs. So I just felt like I was a kid in the candy store with that.
Let's take some questions from the student journalists. Why don't we start with you, Soumik?
All right, I don't have mine off the top of my head, so I'll read off the email. So in the current Trump administration, we've seen students' freedom of the press abridged in different ways. A notable example was in March 2025 when tough student Rumeysa Öztürk had her visa revoked and nearly sent back to Turkey, if not for a federal judge ordering her release. How can high school students and advisors protect themselves from unlawful censorship by people outside their school?
Well, it's a hard question. When you have authoritarian behavior by powerful people, interestingly, one of the best ways of resisting that and of claiming your rights is publication. It is more attention, not less. So if it weren't for the fact that this Turkish graduate student at Tufts had been, sort of snatched off a public street, and that there was telephone video of what happened, and if it weren't for the fact that created a lot of public interest, and there was a lot of reporting done about it, both locally and nationally, and a lot of conversation about it, maybe she would have had a harder time getting a lawyer to represent her quickly for free and to press her rights in court. Basically, I think exercising First Amendment rights is a major part of the answer of how you protect the character of the country, how you protect the rule of law, and nobody should decide to sit down and shut up because they're afraid of what might happen.
One of the things that I say about journalism is we're the only profession in the Constitution, and which is true. So there is freedom of the press. I mean, it's the First Amendment, right? So, I think that, I don't think either one of us needs to be glib and say, I do think that this is a very stressful time to start out in journalism or be far along in your career in journalism. But I also feel like I think that the only way to address the situation is to keep doing it and to do it together. So I'm really glad to see that you're in within organizations. There's a lot of different ways you can communicate with people now, but communicating within an organizational structure is a wonderful way to do it. Zoe, did you have a question?
Yes. What advice would you give to students like me or Soumik who are fighting against censorship within their schools?
So, I think most principals are a lot better than the one I had. And they are also concerned about the educational mission and and discipline, and it's also true that nobody especially likes to see stories about things that may not be their best side. I mean, maybe at your school, if you look at what's happening, at the back end of the cafeteria, that they're not properly recycling the way city law says they should. If you want to write a story like that, you're going to ruffle some feathers, and I think you just have to be fair about it and be sure you get your facts right, and care about the evidence. And then if the school doesn't want you to print the story, say, what are you teaching students about real life and about freedom of expression and of the need to call attention to problems so that they can be fixed. Sometimes, when I was covering the military, there was a time when somebody got to know their state National Guard folks very well. When they came back from Iraq, they were complaining that they were getting injured by roadside bombs because the armor was very thin on their Humvees. And some people thought it was unpatriotic of them to write the story. It says the armor's thin on the Humvees and people are getting hurt. Well, the insurgents knew that because they were laying the bombs and they saw what was happening. The people who didn't know that were American citizens, and when the story was published, then the Pentagon suddenly sent a lot of money to up-armor the Humvees in Iraq, and their doors got a lot thicker and fewer of them got injured. Calling attention to problems is how they get fixed. And the best you can do is hope to persuade people of good faith that that's all part of a positive cycle.
So there was a study released last week by the News Literacy Project, which found that 84% of students do not trust the media, and that much of that comes from people don't really understand how newsrooms work. People think people pay for stories, or people are publishing stories because they want to benefit somebody or they want to hurt somebody. Certainly that takes place. I'm really sort of curious how your fellow students feel about your work and feel about journalism, if both of you can speak to that. Why don't we start with you, Zoe?
What I've noticed in my school is that a lot of students are very eager to be interviewed. They love to see their name on the paper, they love to see it on the bulletin board. But when you really ask them, like, do you actually read the newspaper? Do you actually follow what's going on? A lot of the time the response is no. And I feel like they're just a little bit, not uneducated, but, well, yeah, a little bit uneducated. And they just, if they had known more, then they would be very inclined to join, and, because I mean, they love to see their name on it, but, actually reading the newspapers, they don't really do that much.
Do you feel, to this question about how newsrooms work, like working in a newsroom, did that change your view of newspapers at all?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, once I started working in a newsroom, I was like, oh my God, this is so awesome. I love it here. But I feel like other students would feel that too if they just looked inside the classroom or looked at the newspaper. The thing is, they just don't.
How about you, Soumik?
Well, I guess it's kind of the same thing going on in my school. I mean, a lot of people are very eager to talk about, to get interviewed, and to not just that, I guess, bring to light issues that really affect them, because I feel like a lot of people, I guess a lot of people in my staff nowadays are really, like, I guess, excited to get their name out and talk about stuff that they're personally affected by. Yeah, I would say, I guess, in terms of the general student populace, I would say we're pretty known, and a lot of people respect us, especially since we're pretty, I guess, known, I guess, because we have a really strong presence, not just on our website, but also like in social media. So I guess that gives us, a sort of way to tap into the community of our school without exactly being a newspaper per se. like, and kind of just being, I guess, a forum for students to gather and talk about stuff that's going on, like sports and like just general happenings.
Well, I think that's one of the things that local news outlets really can do, is be a place for people to gather. I maybe have time for a few questions from the audience, if anybody has any questions. Yes.
Can I just make one comment to the students?
Yes.
You asked
Say
both.
your name and who you are.
Jim Rosenfeld. I'm a board member of Press Pass, and I'm a lawyer. And
He represented me once.
Yes,
yes.
journalist.
We sued New Jersey for not releasing information.
So the first question you both asked Mr. Gellman was about what do we do if other people are infringing our rights or censoring us? And you gave a journalist's answer, shine more light on it, report on it. I just want to give a lawyer's answer and make sure that you know that there are organizations set up to help students and legal organizations. And I don't know if you know, but the Student Press Law Center is one, and FIRE does a lot of work representing student press organizations. You just Google FIRE First Amendment, because I forget what it stands for. And I'm sure the ACLU does stuff and other organizations. So if you really are ever in a position where you're getting penalized or censored, there are people that want to help you for free, and you should avail yourselves of those organizations.
I just want to doubly confirm that. The Student Press Law Center actually found me the ACLU lawyers who represented me, and I was a summer intern there in college. At these places, they'll give you free advice and a free lawyer if need be.
So great to see that like all this time, like student journalism is still like persisting and thinking about these issues. Any other questions or comments? Yes, in the.
Hey, how are you? Oh, sorry.
First you in the third row from me, and then in the back.
So for the students,
I'll go back down.
so when I was the editor of my school newspaper, which was in print, as soon as it came out, I would go to the cafeteria and see people reading it. And I would immediately get somebody saying, it wasn't the fullback that scored the touchdown, it was the halfback. Or, there's a typo here, or, I would get criticism, because they knew, because they were part of the community. Do you get some of that feedback, critical feedback ever?
Yeah.
Well, we don't have newspapers in my school, unfortunately, but sometimes I'll post it on Instagram, stories that I've written, and it's usually the people closest to me where they'll read it, they're so excited to read it, and then they're like, yeah, you have a typo right here. And I think it's just it's really sweet because they care, but I wish that we had newspapers so that more people could care.
Yeah, for me, I also don't have a physical print, and I feel like I don't really see a lot of people reading it in school because the phone ban, I feel like that makes it a little bit harder to I guess read it during school. And I feel like a lot of people during lunch, they're outside and doing other stuff, not reading exactly. But I would say in terms of errors, hardly do we ever. I'm sure we have in the past, but I would say I think my publication's done a really good job, I guess, at minimizing harm and minimizing these kinds of small errors. Thanks to our really good copy editor. Yeah, it's just our journalists are really dedicated to I guess seeking truth, investigating to the end.
In the back.
Hey, I just want to know, how often do your papers come out? And I just didn't know that. How often do they get published, or how often are they on the internet? And is it hard to do follow-up stories when they come out every once in a while?
Yeah. Our newspaper kind of aims to have a story out at least every 2 weeks, but we don't really follow that often. So we kind of just go based off of, we have a lot of stories and we can kind of publish them all in one major batch. We've never really had issues with follow-ups though. There's a story from 2 years ago and we just had a follow-up on it. So we never really worried about that.
No, you did.
I did?
Sorry to interrupt, but the remote Fridays.
Oh, that's right. The remote Friday story, that wasn't my story, so I wasn't really thinking about it. But, you're right, actually. I think we had the remote Friday story like last year, and then Caesar followed it up, back in May.
They broke the news, they were the first school in the city to approve remote Fridays, right? This was years after the pandemic, they were allowed to go back to it, and then the Amsterdam News republished the story, and then you did a follow-up on how it was going. So I just want to call that out.
All right, a couple more questions. Anything from this side of the room? Yes, over here.
So I have a question as student journalists. Do you have any advice about writing about sensitive topics that, you know, are always in the news, but we cover them as students and there's always controversial opinions, people who don't agree with what you're writing, but also we don't want to stay silent on these topics and not cover them all. So do you have any advice on writing about them?
Well, can you give an example of what kind of topic?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm currently writing an article about the conflict in the Middle East with Israel and Palestine. And I do always try to get a range of voices from our student body. We have a very large and diverse student body, so it's very easy to get all the ideas that might be present. But sometimes it goes through a lot of monitoring from our assistant principals and from our advisors, just to make sure that it's, you know, not going to get us in any trouble or not cause anything that's too controversial or put a spotlight on us as a school. And sometimes it feels like it might cut down on what we're trying to say, so is there a way that we can balance both sides?
Do you want to answer that? Then I'll answer that.
Yeah, one thing is,
A little bit.
Thank you for asking. Yes, the question was, do we have advice about how to handle sensitive topics in like Israel-Palestine, for example? Like how to handle that?
well, first of all, don't be afraid of controversy. Vigorous First Amendment speech can be controversial. I mean, the founders knew that when they wrote it, first into the Bill of Rights. Controversial subjects, though, require that, number one, you be very careful with facts. Even in an opinion piece, you need to check the facts. And look for sort of documentary sources on those facts. And second of all, it's not just important to get some point of view from, quote unquote, both sides. It's important that all sides of a controversial subject, if you're writing about that subject, get to have their best to say. So, if I'm writing about, some political figure and I have, a bunch of evidence of things that they did wrong, and then just say, the political figure denies it. That's not fair, right? I mean, what's the strongest thing that person can say? And honestly, when you're writing papers for your teachers, if you address the strongest arguments against your position, it's a much better paper than if you skip over that, because that's kind of the hard thinking, and that's giving more respect to your readers.
Well, just add a couple of things. I mean, I appreciate you for taking on a subject like that. It's hard. And it's hard when you have people that you like and respect and that are in your community and that may have divergent views. So last year I was on a panel similar to this with Isabella Ramirez, who was the editor-in-chief of the Columbia Spectator during the initial demonstrations at Columbia. And she was talking about how, the campus had barred all the media at one point. So she was because she was a student, she was still allowed on campus. So she was reporting on demonstrations, and she was sort of like, when I hit publish, I'm hitting publish to the world, because I'm the only one here. And she talked about how hard she worked to really speak to people on both sides and let everybody really have their say, and also treat people fairly, like not characterize what they were saying, say what they were saying, trying to keep it respectful. and how she gained a lot of trust from the community by just being a vehicle. So it's like you really do have to do the work when it's a sensitive or maybe it's a controversial topic, but it's something that we all do, and I think we all feel enriched by it, which is, you may have your own view, but the point is not for you to underline that view. The point is to really find out what everybody else is thinking, and people do come to respect you for it. I mean, I've had people furious with me. I've, gotten on blacklists, and at the end of the day, like, people still keep talking to me, and I keep reporting because they understand at the end of the day I'm going to be fair to their point of view, and I'm going to represent it accurately to the best of my ability. So I hope that is helpful. A couple more questions, we have time? Okay, so one more forward, one more back.
So this is for our two current high school journalists. Can you tell us what the favorite story that you have that you worked on, either as a reporter, writer, or editor, and why?
I'll do this one. All right. One of my favorite stories I've like had a part in was published a little earlier this year. It referred to like what happened with Oster, and talking about how student press freedom was kind of being abridged, and we had it was kind of that kind of story. I guess in solidarity with what was going on in the world, and I think it was when it was a very, I guess, in the newsroom there was a lot of talk about it because I wrote a little bit about it, and I think another student did, and it was kind of like, how do we publish this? Like, do we publish this under my name? Do we publish this under her name? Do we publish this like as just like our staff, like anonymously? And we ended up going the anonymous route, but I feel like even still, I had a lot of, I guess, fun. It was like to write and to, I guess, about something really important to me, and like in a very hectic time to, I guess, inspire other people in, I guess, staff, and just like in the future to like in my publications, like I guess write no matter what's going on.
So
This is a very recent story that we did, and I didn't write it, but I edited it. And the reason that it's my favorite, it's the story about our schools or our staff's visit to the Anne Frank Museum. And it's my favorite because while I didn't write it, I was interviewed for it and I edited it, and I had a hand in practically everything of the production, like a little bit of everything. And it was fun to write, but it was also fun to experience. And when I looked at, my interview on the paper, I was like, oh wow, this is how it feels.
all right, Greg Jr.
Yeah. So to our two current journalists, I mean, maybe I missed it right at the beginning, but are either of you considering careers in journalism? And then maybe to Mr. Gellman, what advice would you have to young people, given the diversification of media and different sources of information, to people who potentially want to go into journalism now?
Are you thinking about a career in journalism, either one of you?
You go first.
I am definitely, I want to major in communications, but that's my only plan for right now.
As for me, I'm kind of undecided at this point, but I do feel like all the skills, all of the, I guess, everything I've built up over these past 2 years, almost 3, in journalism has really prepared me for wherever I go in the future, because I feel like those kind of skills, reporting, interrogating, investigating, really live with you.
Bart, any sort of fortune cookie-sized advice on this?
Well, let's see. I mean, a bunch of years ago, a talented young woman I know was divided between offers to join a newspaper or go to law school. And I told her that a lot of my college classmates who went to law school didn't love what they were doing. Although I thought it's really important. I mean, if you have a good reason to go and you know why you're going, by all means. But she could also try journalism for a couple of years, and because I thought she had a calling for it. And her name was Jodi Cantor, now of the New York Times, Pulitzer winner, and she's really changed the world with her coverage of Me Too and other things. So I hope you do consider it, and read widely, and offer to write a piece, on spec for a website or any kind of news medium that you like. Write something that you know about or you're in a position to find out about. Write for student publications, keep doing that because they are feeders straight into the journalism world.
All right, thank you, audience questions. We just had a question from Greg Jr. Now we're going to hear from Greg Sr., who is Greg Fuchek, the principal of the Bronx River High School, not at all like Bart's principal, where Zoe goes to school. He was named Administrator of the Year by the Journalism Education Association. Hi, Greg, where are you?
Thank you very much. Just quickly, I want to say thank you to Press Pass, to Beth and Lara. We wouldn't have been able to do this without you guys, with their support, both educationally, mentorship, financially, all of that. We're going into our 5th year now of a school newspaper at Bronx River, and it's just been a great experience. I founded Bronx River 13 years ago. As many of you know, the initiative was to break up all the large comprehensive high schools in New York City and open smaller ones. I'm a huge believer in the small school model because the underlying goal for me always was making a school community where kids felt deeply connected to the school. And our newspaper staff and our newspaper team is absolutely integral to that feeling of community that we have as a school. So I'm a huge believer. I'm very thankful. We look forward to continue it. And I just hope that I don't get a call tomorrow that Barton and Zoe are suing me after. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But thank you all very much.